losing. And I get it together. I'm a bird of a feather. I'm a winged fly. And our love is forever. Oh, what I fear is drawing near. I embrace it all, laughter and a tear.
The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
All right, we are back and we're live. Feet to the fire. I'm your host, James Othienchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. All right. Well, we got the show we had planned the other day. I got one little problem here. Gosh. This shows how you can plan for this stuff. And when you go live... Anyway, today I have Rob Daven. We're going to call him in a few minutes. We'll be talking to him live about internet security and privacy or the erroneous expectation. Oh, I see what's wrong here. The erroneous expectations thereof, and what you can do and what you should understand can't be done for internet safety. That's why you have the thing over here. Was it over here? Yeah. Internet privacy, an oxymoron. So a couple of things to get to first. Let me go to... I know it's here. Was it? Interesting. There are some people who think that Israel did the 9/11 stuff. Then I have no comment on it at this point. We've had many shows on it, but I thought this was interesting. There is a memorial in Israel made with the steel from the building, and in the memorial there is it has all the names of people who died and so on. But in here, it has an interesting inscription. It says the metal remains were taken. This metal remnant was taken from the remains of the Twin Towers that imploded on September 11th. Turn off my sound here. Imploded. I've never heard it said like that. Everybody says collapse. The Twin Towers collapsed. Imploded. Now, I don't know if I doubt very much it's a translation problem. I just thought that there was a little kind of interesting there. Somebody put up this video. I have seen it before. I think it's good to see again. When they confiscated all of the video from 9/11 and all the cameras that are all around about. I don't know if they missed this one or if somebody released it, but and you can look at the bottom there. It doesn't look like an airplane, full-blown airplane hitting it, and it does look like now. You notice this is moving. This picture is moving, so it can't be a camera. I mean, assuming this is a legitimate picture, it can't be a webcam or a security cam or webcam because it's moving. So interesting. I guess it's, everybody talks about these, getting the 9/11 truth and whatnot out. And I don't know, after 18 years, I mean, Kennedy, yes, most people, Kennedy was still shot by Oswald. Very, very disturbing thing here. And this is very important. I got links. I'll put links in here. You can share it. This website, Life Site News, is being censored to some degree. And Ted Cruz got involved. Senator Ted Cruz got involved with it. Sent him a letter, and they promised to, it was an accident. I'm sorry. That kind of thing. And so they are promising to work into it, work it out. And we'll see. We'll see about that. But they got a story up here and this is how they're taking the feed. You talk about harvesting fetal tissue and body parts and selling them, which I don't know what you could sell dead baby body parts for. I mean, to some degree, you can study them like any other cadaver, but here's a quote from this, and I'll leave it at that, and you can read the article. Dr. Desher, if I'm saying it right, told me the fetus would have to be alive at the time the organs were harvested that's a quote, for use in the Langendorf apparatus, apparently, which keeps the heart running. I read in the article, it keeps the heart beating, but the CEO of STEM Express essentially admitted in court last week that her biotech company supplied beating fetal hearts and intact fetal heads to medical research. Delian's lawyer told the court that STEM Express was mentioned in connection with a Stanford study where the Langendorf procedure used techniques that required, quote unquote, required a beating heart. Now, it's one thing to sell the body parts, but how do you get a beating heart out of a aborted child over to the study here, but by having the child alive? I'm sure this is all over the news, right? Oh, I guess I got to take him off there. He's not there yet. So it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Now, this is another. We'll do another one here. Apparently, this guy lives in my county. He practiced for years in Indiana as an abortion doctor. Dr. Ulrich George Klopfer performed over 30,000 abortions before he passed away on September 3rd. Now, this is the key part. His family went to his house to get rid of his personal effects, perhaps sell the house, whatever. They found 2,246 fetal remains were found in the home of the doctor who used to perform abortions in Indiana until his license was suspended. 2,000 in preserved, not just thrown around, but preserved. Gosh. But see, I understand if you don't think that's a living being, well, that doesn't matter. Like you saved a liver. It's not for me. Can't turn the ringer off. I'll get the master ringer out here. So so I understand if you're saying it's not a human being, well then it doesn't matter. It's like saving a liver. Of course, if he had a bunch of livers in his house or I don't know, whatever, it would be kind of weird anyway. But look up that website. That website is LifeSite. What is it? LifeSite? Well, that particular one was the news story, but lifesitenews.com. They're going into a battle. Also, my sister sent me this stuff, and I put it up. It's an article. It's a video on akathisia, which is a condition where, to put it in a nutshell, the body is damaged by certain drugs, pharmaceuticals, and then the body itself, the brain itself, develops systems like horror, extreme pain. You can't stop moving around because it hurts too much. Moving around feels better, so you're constantly moving around. Can't sleep, and of course they don't really recognize it. They don't really recognize it much because it is it kind of has the drugs, and the doctors are responsible for it. So I'll put the links for this video as well. Also, getting back to this abortion thing, liveaction.org. There's a report on how babies were saved by abortion pill reversal. There were hundreds others saved where if you take the abortion pill and then decide not to, there is a time window where you can reverse it. They don't tell you that when they do it. So a lot of this stuff is getting this information out where people know. And there he is, Tommy Robinson. Apparently survived and got out of prison. Here's a picture of him with his beard and long hair. The long-haired freak. I got a couple of videos about it. He was visited. He was visited for the first 4 months by imams who wanted to convert him, and then eventually he got to see a Christian priest or pastor. I forgot what his denomination is, and so he made it. Now, appeal is denial. Now, before we all get all excited, it just means that denial doesn't mean that he will be charged. When he's charged, tried, and found guilty, I mean, even indicted and tried. We get to that point, I'll be more. But people are real positive about it, and I hope it does happen. But at least there's a step. This is something. It's not. And even though, of course, this information does come out through sources, but it has been corroborated by a lot of different people who have sources. So hopefully it's real. Because these guys planned a coup against the president. Like him or not, you can't be doing this stuff. I also posted this. It's like, is there any genie left in the bottle? Scientists create a device that can mass produce human embryos. Huh? They call it synthetic human life. It's not even clear what that even means. NPR. I don't know. This reminds me of Brave New World, where they would make all when they would plan pregnancies, and then they would retard the brain to go along with the projected duties of that person when they're born, and then they raise them in a bed, mind controlling them as they grew. Well, the Supreme Court did allow Trump to continue with his completely legal and constitutional border security things. But, of course, you're going to have the pushback from the coup members. But it did go through. And I want to mention the one thing about, I'm saying a lot of stuff here. I wanted to get a couple things. I'm already a little late for Rob. Talk about this red flag laws. It's simply unconstitutional. Let me read the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, which we are submissive to as a country. The government is submissive to the Constitution, which protects us, the people. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against reasonable search and seizure shall not be violated, and no warrants shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place where to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, of course, you can say I'm looking for AR-15s, but you're going to need the probable cause. Well, we think he's crazy. Well, wait a minute. You need to have something to back that up. So I think that's going to be it for now. We're going to get into this talk to here today. Yeah, okay. So let me get this back here. Let me go over here. Oh, wait a minute. Got it wrong? Oh, there we go. Boom, boom, boom. Doom, da, doom. Hello.
Hey, James.
There he is. Rob Daven live from up in Northwest Territories, where I didn't know people still lived. That's about as far.
There's a few of us.
And we've had, this is not really on the topic, but we've had talks about, like, for example, healthcare and whatnot, and how the healthcare works up there and how you're happy with it and all that. And I mentioned that all things being equal, you probably have people who are living up in Yellowknife who have are surviving winters. There's a certain kind of class of people who live in the north as you go up there who have integrity and so forth. And when you have them taking care of it that way, fine. But I don't know, is it the same like in Toronto or?
It depends on where you go. I think there's a lot of problems going on in our major cities that are compounding issues with healthcare. I think the vast majority of places you go in Canada, the healthcare is fine. There's always going to be complaints. There's always going to be issues. But I don't see too many problems. The only time I've ever seen it where it bugged me was in the major cities, but it was because in a lot of those major cities, they've never invested anything in healthcare because the population, the centers that the healthcare is in, like the population tends to be, a little bit poor, maybe not as affluent, so they don't really put resources in there. So in those cases, you could set in a doctor's office for 20 hours and not see anybody. But in most other places, any place I've ever gone in Canada other than the major cities, you wait an hour, you get to go in, you see the doctor, you leave, and unless you have a prescription to get filled, you don't have to pay anything. So, I mean, it was funny. I was just reading an article on Fox News regarding healthcare, and like there was a lot of misnomers in that article, and I thought it was kind of weird how, you have your opinion on healthcare and I have mine, and I think we could come to some sort of agreement if everybody would stop inflating numbers and making it sound, like putting spin on things. But
well, I'd say that the way you could look at it here is consider everywhere in America a major city because of the corruption. And one of the things, I have a buddy of mine who was in the VA. Now it's better now because Trump changed the VA stuff, and he's amazed by it. But the VA is an example to me of healthcare that's run by the government, and the waiting lines and the poor care. They had a fine. They had hospitals were doing stuff was bad. That's just what I envision of it. But anyway, we didn't really come to talk about it. People are going, hey, let's get to the good stuff.
What is this?
So anyway, Rob Daven, who is the curator and creator of Conspiracy Channel, the Conspiracy Channel. Let me go to the webpage here for a minute. We'll be right back. So what's going on the Conspiracy Channel, and some of the stuff you had to go through and all the knucklehead stuff that has happened?
Oh, well, it started probably 3 years ago. One day, our payment processors all suddenly decided, hey, we're not working with you guys anymore. So they pulled our access, with the exception of PayPal. Surprisingly, PayPal was the only one that stuck with us. And I thought it was weird because it all happened at once, but I was like, well, businesses change and maybe they're not interested in providing payment services to somebody that does digital content. So a few months go on, and then all of a sudden I get a hosting bill for like $2,000 in 1 month for video. And I'm like, what is this? And suddenly, we went from, paying $200 a year in video hosting to paying $2,000 a month in video hosting, without any real explanation of why the sudden jump. Like I said to the guy, I was like, well, I don't mind paying for what we're using, but why did it all of a sudden go from $200 a year to $2,000 a month? I never really got a good explanation. Finally got a solution worked out with another provider, got that all set up, and I made a comment on Facebook. They were having an anti-racism march in town. And it's kind of a little bit of a side note, but my thing with anti-racism marches is they generally make racists. They make people that maybe don't really, have an opinion either way feel threatened, because there's a lot of this, like, white males are, the problem in Western civilization. So white males feel threatened, and that starts to make them become racist because they're seeing other races attack them all the time. Anyhow, I made a comment on Facebook. Usually I mark everything in just so friends can see it, but this was one of those times I forgot to hit the setting and it went out to public. The people that were running the march seen it, and the next thing I know, I had the national broadcaster CBC contacting me, wanted an interview. I was labeled a racist. They tracked my wife down and started harassing her at work. Some of her coworkers were responsible for part of that. It just got really intense. Wow. And after that point, I was like, you know what? And the Conspiracy Channel is what they used to paint me as a racist, which was really interesting. So at that point, I just kind of decided it was time for me to drop out of the public eye for a little bit. And like I said, it's been about 2 years since I've done anything public, even interviews, just because it was crazy. It was, it was like getting Me Too'd without being, on the national media.
Oh, great. So now I'm going to be, thanks to you, I'll be labeled a racist. Thanks a lot, buddy. You should have given me that disclaimer before I had you on here.
Yeah, I know. I found it really funny that I was being called a racist, though my wife isn't white. I'm not going to, get up and say, hey, my wife's so-and-so, and she, and try to virtue signal by it. But my wife's not white. My brother-in-law is not white. Where racism wasn't really anything that was ever taught in my family. So I don't know where they pulled this out of, but that's what it became. And like when CBC was trying to get me to go on the record, they were going to write an entire expose on this conspiracy theorist that lives in the Northwest Territories that's putting out all this racist neo-Nazi propaganda and stuff. It got pretty intense.
Oh.
So I ended up having to call a lawyer and threaten to sue people. And yeah, it wasn't fun.
No, it doesn't sound like it. This is the problem is this painting with the brush, because just because you're somebody, for example, I did a show. I mean, I guess if somebody happened to pick it up, I'd be in the same boat. But I mentioned about how, back in the 70s, the neo-Nazis, the actual real guys, with the Sieg Heil and the uniforms and the whole, they were having stuff in Chicago, and they were protected they went to the Supreme Court, the whole 9 yards. It was all protected by the Supreme Court. It says, it doesn't have to be good, nice speech, good speech. It could be lousy speech. It could be hate speech. It's covered. Don't That's go, And so my whole thing was just don't go to it. And back then they actually had organized the whole 9 yards. It was just the flag and all that. And so they were going to march in Skokie, which was anyway predominantly Jewish suburb, which had Holocaust survivors there, and they were not letting them do it and so on. And they said you had to, so they were going to. And what Chicago did was they made a deal with these guys. They let them march in Chicago if they would not go to that suburb. And they said, okay, they did it. And they had their march, and nothing happened. And later they disbanded because they caught the leader, said he was had sex with a child. Now,
of course.
No, honestly, don't really know if that. I mean, maybe he did. Maybe he got set up. If you talk to him, he got set up. You talk to everybody else, he didn't. So whatever. But my whole point of that story was this whole thing about hate speech is ridiculous. People can be bloody, racist, screaming hate all they want, as long as they don't say, I'm going to kill you. or facilitate a discussion about that, or doing harm to you, or I'm going to come burn your house down. When you do that stuff, you've now went into assault, which is not covered by the First Amendment. So
Exactly.
it's so simple, but of course we all know that the people who are using this hate speech as a portable label to label anybody they don't like, so that they can have their ideology. But anyway, we already went off track here. 15 minutes already. But it is on track. It's about your setup, and you had Free Jack TV. That's another channel you had.
That was all put on hiatus. I mean, it's still there. You can go check it out. Nothing's been updated in quite a bit of time, but now that things have kind of calmed down and it seems like the pendulum's swinging a bit the other way, we're working on getting everything back in order and getting back to broadcasting. It's just a lot of software to build and a lot of moving pieces to put together between now and some sort of launch.
Right, and it's for Roku. You can get the app to. I guess it's all of them, right? I have Roku, but it's on Amazon and all the other ones too.
Yeah, it's on Amazon and Roku. Yeah.
Okay. And you can catch Feet to the Fire. In fact, I did several ones that I had a custom version for you, and you're set up there, and other people. All right, I lost my little note here. Here it is. All right, so let's get into the now privacy in the internet. My whole point of this is to say that the word privacy in the internet is like, internet security, internet privacy is like an oxymoron. I mean, and it's really big business for people giving the illusion that you're getting security or privacy, and you are getting some security or privacy, but because of the design of the actual machines themselves, there is a way to circumvent everything. I mean, you can have your VPN and all that stuff working fine, except if wherever you go to, you bring them onto your computer through that nice secure tunnel, well, then it's all over. But let's get into that. You actually worked on network security and so forth, one of your many hats. So let's get into that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's one thing. Let's start with VPNs. Okay. Virtual private networks. They're being marketed as a way to, hide what you do online and keep your information secure. To a point, it's somewhat true. It will keep it from most low-level hackers being able to access your information, which is always a good thing. But if you're talking about maybe a bad actor in a government wanting to target you, well, that's not going to work because they have access to get around things like VPNs. Like there's been people that have been caught doing stuff using a VPN, but then they'd log into their Google account through the VPN, and then they could just track exactly who you were. And because you logged into your Google account and it was linked to this VPN IP address, they have you red-handed that you were doing whatever. So
let's stop there for 1 second. This is a huge point, that you can have all this protection and you go into Google, you log into Amazon, Facebook, any of these places with tracking. When you log into them, they're going like, "Hey, I don't recognize who's coming at me. It's not coming from it's coming from another country for that matter. If you have a VPN that goes to other countries, hey, I don't know who this is. You log in and go, oh, okay, we got that. And it's like, boom, you've just lost all that support.
Even worse, if say you logged into Google to check your email, you log out and start up your VPN and start going around on the internet. There's cookies that Google will store on your machine that still report back to Google where you're going, even though you haven't visited Google, but your VPN's open, but those cookies still exist. I mean, there are ways around that too, but every time you try to secure things, you add another layer of complication to what you're doing. So for most people to have a really secure system is almost impossible.
Yeah, I know. I've been reading about this stuff since we were talking about this show. And one of the ways people talk about security is to have a, I'm seeing the logo and I can't think the name of it. A private virtual server in your computer. What's the?
Oh yeah.
Virtual
desktop.
There's. I have it actually on my Mac because I have a Windows backup within that on the Mac. But you can create a virtual box, and it will be isolated from the outside of the computer. So, like, the box itself goes on the internet, and the box itself will still have these same security risks inside this, but it stays inside this rather than your computer. But the problem is, you can't bring the stuff in and out. I mean, you're kind of like, in order to get the security, you're now isolating yourself from your own stuff. So as soon as you open up external drives to it, now you also open up a potential to have this stuff go back to your system.
Well, and there's another issue there too, and this is one of the big issues with technology, is the faith issue. You have faith that your VM or virtual machine.
That's it, virtual machine.
Communicate.
There we go.
I have the program here. I had to open it up. It was like, what's the name of this? You have to have faith that your virtual machine isn't interacting with your desktop, but you don't know. You don't, like, most of us, I can read code, but most people can't. And even then, I'd have to dig through every line of code to verify that was true. Like, this assumption that these things work is just that, an assumption. We don't know. It's like Microsoft claiming how secure Windows is, even though since Windows 95, they've had backdoors in it for the NSA. So, like, it's all based on faith, and it's a dangerous concept.
Right. And faith is the issue that you also have with the VPNs as well.
Yep.
Is that when you have a VPN, they're saying, we don't keep logs. Well, you hope they don't keep logs, and you hope they don't get compromised in some way either. But I tell you, my eyes opened up a while back when I realized if you have a keylogger in your computer, it doesn't matter. Because every keystroke you type, passwords included, is kept in a file that, depending on where it came from and how you go back to that access to that place, if it's it could send it to an address, it doesn't matter. So I mean, you can have, I always think about these cell phones, right? They have I think it's called the Red Phone, which is at least it was, I haven't seen it in a while, but it was an app that encrypted your phone, so that somebody with the Red Phone app on the other side, when you're talking to them, you can call them, hey, how you doing? Hey, let's go to the Red Phone. Boom, you do it. It encrypts it from there and there. That's great, right? Well, provided there's nothing else on your phone that's getting your voice.
Yes.
Because you got a microphone in there. It could take your voice as the Red Phone's taking your voice and still sending it out. I mean, you'd have to have a computer degree to know this stuff, to be able to go through and personally do it. That's kind of why I like open source, is because you do have people who know what they're doing checking up on it. So I can't do it, but somebody who likes doing this stuff, many of them are, and keeping them honest and so forth. So that's why I try to go with open source as best I can.
Yeah, open source is one of the few aspects of the computer industry that's still kind of a pure thing where, because it is open source, you can see the source code, you can go through it line by line, and people do. Anytime there's been an open source product that was out there that had any sort of like malicious code in it, was always picked up almost immediately by security researchers or whatever. So it's good, but then again, open source, the big problem with that is sometimes it can be really complicated for people to use, right? And it all goes back to this, some people can do it, but most people can't.
Right. That's what happened with Linux in the beginning. It was command line stuff, which people got out of Windows, but now they're coming out with the Linux. In fact, here's the thing: Windows is coming out with Linux.
Yep.
that to me is talk about an oxymoron. Windows coming out in Linux, but
well, it's smart on their part because it opens up that entire Linux software library that hasn't been able to be used on Windows before. So, but you're starting to see all the major manufacturers have their operating systems based on Linux. Mac already does.
Windows does too. I guess they took over one of the
like
BOS or one of those old defunct ones or something. I was hearing.
Yeah, and they've written a lot of it into the kernel, so you can access a lot of this Linux stuff. Google Chrome OS, that all these new Chromebooks that are out there, that's all based off Linux. So, like they're all going that way just because it's probably one of the best operating systems out there because it was open source and it had so many hands in it working on it. It made it really nice and optimized. It's just hard to use in its base form.
Right. Well, I've avoided it only because I bought the software, and I'd have to go even if it was free. If people say, "Oh, there's everything," I got multi-track video software and all that. Oh, they got it all. They got it all for Linux. Yeah, but I have to relearn it. So
yeah.
I keep my Windows machine off the internet unless I have to do it. Plus, I did take your advice, and I did look into that one VPN. For like a year for a test to see how things go. And here's a couple of the problems I had with the VPN is, right now on my machine right now, I'm not using the VPN. I'm broadcasting live HD video. I don't know if it can handle that. I tested it. It said it could, but I don't know if it was, so I didn't. On my other computer,
it can be flaky.
My other computer, I am using it. So now, if I was to both log in to Google Gmail, let's say, as a test, it's a red flag. Oh, somebody's trying to hack your account because you got two different IPs coming, especially if your VPN's outside of the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you're, it's like I'm going over to Proton Mail because I'm switching my Google Gmail to Proton Mail. I'm in the process of it, but I got a lot of stuff. The lights, the light bill, whatever, is all in the other stuff. But in the interim, do you recommend, since if you log in on your VPN with Google, it doesn't matter? Should you just not VPN to stuff when you're going to go to Gmail? I mean, is it?
It depends on what your goals are. I'm not too worried about what Google sees, just because they're just a step below the intelligence organization, so they have access to a lot of data anyway. And then, like, I don't see any reason for me to worry about them having my information. I don't necessarily like it, but I don't worry about it. But if I was a Julian Assange, want to be using something like Proton or something similar. I guess it all really depends on your goals for security. There's really no way to keep them. If you're going to go online at all, you're going to be monitored. You're going to be followed by Google, Facebook, Microsoft, all the big companies. No matter what you do, there's always a way for them to get in. So the only real way to stay secure on the internet is get off the internet.
Right. Well, and I don't worry. I mean, the original Google thing, the business plan was, I wonder if Spreaker stopped broadcasting. And I'm looking at the view meter has stopped, but the counter's still going. So I don't know if somebody can get a hold of me. I'll upload the, replace the audio if it didn't. But Google's business plan back in the day was, we're going to give you targeted advertisement. So we're going to anonymously we'll give you a number, and we'll watch this number, and you go here, there, and the other place. We'll keep track of it. So when an advertiser comes that fits into that profile, we'll send you an ad. Now, it helps the advertiser because they're getting a higher quality not a cold knock. They're getting somebody that already has been warmed up to the topic a bit. And it's good for you because you're not getting weird ads for things you have nothing to do with. So it's a kind of a good thing. But of course, human nature, it's got to spoil it, right? It's got to go into spying and selling stuff and all that. And like you, I don't really care about it because it's not like I'm leading some kind of, whether it be illegal or simply patriot something or other, or plans or whatever. I have nothing, my banking and all that, I'd like that to be all private. But it does bother me. It does bother me that you can't opt out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just can't. I mean, even if you go if you go to Google, you don't get an account, you log in cold. They don't have that information. Okay, somebody just said it's still broadcasting. All right, good. You have that information, and it seems. I don't know. It just seems that the problem is even if you don't log on to it, they still can give you this anonymous number, and then they're partnering with other people. So if you don't log into Google, but you log into Amazon, let's say, and I don't know this for a fact, but to me it seems probable, and then you log in somewhere else that shares information, well, they can figure out, oh, I know what that is. Unless it's this another person who has the exact same tendencies and ideas, and they can fill it in anyway, even if you don't log in there.
Yep. Oh yeah. There's lots of little tricks you can do. Like I do a lot of web design in my day job, and there's lots of little tricks you can do to pull up and find out where somebody's been or like who sent them there, where they were the 15 sites before that. Like there's lots of little data sitting on your computer that most people just don't realize is there. And there are ways to keep yourself clean and to hide all that stuff and remove it. But like I said, it's a lifestyle of constantly managing your data online, and most people just don't have time or interest to do it.
Right. So let's. It sounds kind of anticlimactic. It's like, oh, good, we're going to learn how to protect ourselves. Well, you can't. Well, it's like
basically.
And thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you later. No, I mean you can't. You can to a degree. To me, it's like this. It's similar to this. If they, whoever they are, want your car, you can have all kinds of alarms on it. You can, I don't know, you do whatever you want with it. You have it in your garage. They can land a team of commandos and cut into your garage and pull it out with a tank or something and pull it away. I mean, they can get it if they want. You got to look at it in that terms. If the government is interested in you for some reason and they want to get the information, they will get it. I mean, you could do these things and you can keep the common thief. It's like using that locking device on your wheel, right?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Right.
That's
So yeah, it'll keep maybe somebody who's who's not a real professional on it. But if you have a professional who may have a pass key, for example, or for example, like I said, they'll just take a big hook and pull your car and take it away.
Mm-hmm. I
mean, I've actually had a van stolen in front of my house, and it turns out it wasn't stolen. It was towed for being a abandoned vehicle. Now that's a good compliment when your car is considered abandoned vehicle in front of my house. Did they bother to run the plates and see, hey, this van actually goes to this house? And I drove home that night from work. So the next day I come up, my van's gone. I'm thinking it's stolen. I filed a report. Turns out it was towed. They took the license plates off, threw it in the van. They changed one number off the VIN. VIN?
Yeah.
And they towed it in. So they were going to junk it. It was gone. They got their pay for towing it. They're going to junk it. I happened to be sitting on a bus. I had to go downtown, Chicago, and I had no car, so I had to take a bus. I'm coming down the highway looking out where they keep towed cars, and I saw my van. I yelled up I go, that's my van. And people looking at me in the bus like, what? What are the odds of that? Like, all I had to do was be a little bit row over, and I wouldn't have saw it,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, there's lots of-
my whole point on that is that if they really want to get you, they can get you. Now, I got a little list of stuff here you wanted to go through related, and I was kind of interested in this next one, the Unabomber Manifesto.
Yeah.
I want to hear how that ties into this.
Okay. Have you ever read the manifesto, or did you, like me back in the day? I just listened to the news reports. I never did actually read the manifesto until recently.
No, I probably have seen excerpts, and it's been a long time. So, for all practical purposes, no.
I highly recommend everybody. Now, let me preface this number one with
You're going to be back on
Ted
the news.
Kaczynski was a terrorist, and blowing people up to achieve an objective is inherently wrong, and he deserves to be in jail for the rest of his life. That being said, if you sit down and read the Unabomber Manifesto, he nails our world, 20, 30 years ago. Everything down to the rise of the leftists and political correctness, and how technology was being used against us to basically enslave the poor even more, and to start dividing us up into these classes of people where we have the lower class that is slave to the technology, and then we have this upper echelon of class of people that control the technology. And it's absolutely amazing. I was doing work on another project. I was actually doing work on serial killers and terrorists, looking at the esoteric nature of some of those people. And that's when I picked up, the Unabomber, because I remember being a kid and totally being amazed that there's this guy sitting in a cabin somewhere blowing people up. So I went and found a copy of it online and started reading through it. And in the first 3 paragraphs, he starts talking about this rise of this extreme leftism, where everybody's coddled and nobody gets anything done. And it just basically enslaves us to a technology. And at the end of it, I was totally amazed. He nailed it directly, what was going to happen. And now it made me understand why he might have did what he did. Like I said, I definitely don't agree with it. I don't think it was the method of handling things, but it would have drove you crazy knowing what he knew, because he was also involved in the MK Ultra experiments where they were dosing him with LSD. So he was somewhat knowledgeable of what was actually going on behind closed doors.
Yeah, now I might ask, in these days today, do you think that they created him by those deals, or perhaps unleashed him?
I think they unleashed him. I think what happened is, and this is all just guesses going off of what I've read about the man and what was going on at the time. I'm guessing while he was working, I want to say UCLA, but I could be wrong about that. But it was one of the major universities. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's seen things and realized, was able to extrapolate what they could be used for by a military industrial complex, where these machines, they would eliminate your privacy. They would allow instantaneous access to your data. We walk around with a cell phone in our pocket that tracks everything we do, whether we have the tracking on or not. All these little things that he would have seen coming. And then, you dose him with a high dose of LSD, and torture him a bit, and he snaps, runs to the woods, and that's where we end up with a Unabomber.
Right. And because of the violence, now they can just disclaim anything that he had written on there.
Well, that's the other thing too. I shouldn't say we. I don't know 100% that Kaczynski was even responsible. I wasn't there. I didn't see him build the bombs. I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying I don't know. So maybe he was set up so they kept this information under wraps. I don't know. At this point, I have to really question it, because it's a very prophetic document.
Well, there's also the theory that they have to tell you what they're going to do by some spiritual law or whatever. So they end up releasing this stuff in movies and books and what have you up front, so they can turn around, presumably to God, I guess, or whatever, and say, "Oh no, we told them," and they still, we warned them,
I almost think they don't have any choice but to tell you, and it might not even be a conscious choice. It just slips out of their lips.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times there, we get these little glimpses of behind the curtain. I don't think the guys that are doing it necessarily realize they're even had said something that would reveal it.
Yeah, that does happen in other things. So
yeah, so
I'm doubting that I'm going to find an audiobook of the Unabomber's Manifesto, because that would be the best way for me.
There's a YouTube copy of it.
Is it
where somebody took and ran it through a voice synthesizer to generate the.
Okay. I got one of those myself. Maybe if it comes down to it, I'll do it.
Well, this one's actually done. I tried to do it with the actual copy of the PDF, and it didn't work so well. But the copy on YouTube is actually pretty well done for what it is. Okay. So that would work well.
Yeah, because I haven't, and now that you're saying this stuff, I mean, the people. Give you an example. I was in a store that our air conditioning broke, and I went and got a used one just to get us through the rest of the next few more weeks. And when I was coming in with I was coming in the door with the old air conditioner, and there was a young kid, coming out. Now, I just been in and out. In fact, the reason why I'm going back with it is I got one, and it was too loud. I brought it back, got another one. So when I was bringing it back, I was in and out already, and people are holding the door for me. How you doing? Have a good day, and this and that. So this kid comes out. I'm coming in the door. He opens the door. I coming in with his air conditioner. He just lets go of the door. No conscious thing like, hey, I will open the door and help this guy. It didn't even cross the mind. So, I mean, I'm not saying that technology is doing this, but the separation from humanity is, I think, not to mention it's a whole assault. And again, maybe another show for that, because we're talking. Some of these things are very interesting, and I want to get them before it get too late. The mass exodus of tech people from the industry. I don't think I'm even aware of that.
No, nobody's really talking about it, but I've been seeing it for 10, 15 years it happening, but it seems to be picking up speed, where a lot of people that work in tech, they get up to a certain level and they realize what they're involved in, and they kind of run away from the industry. Now, with me, this happened to me, back in like 2002, 2003, and I thought I was just a weirdo for thinking that way. But now it's become a thing where you realize, working for a company like Google or Facebook or Bell Media, or you can name hundreds of different tech companies that you could be working for. They're all going towards the goal of eliminating the ability for freedom. Every last one of them. It's like it's being like, I've never been a big believer in the whole concept of hell and the devil, and like, it just seemed ludicrous to me. But now I'm starting to wonder, is there an intelligence out there that's pulling all these strings to make all this stuff happen? Because, like, how are all these companies working together to this one end without, like, there's no way they could have ever planned it out. It seems organic in a lot of ways, but they seem to be onto something where it's all about control. It's all about locking us down. It's all about 1984. And the people in the tech industry are starting to realize it, and they're getting out of tech and they're moving. Like, I moved to the Northwest Territories of Canada to get away from it. Like I said, I was an early adopter, but now you're starting to see a lot more people doing that, where Whitehorse, which is another big northern community, has a huge amount of people that work freelance jobs on the internet that live there. And part of the reason is they got out of big tech and took off and got away from it, because they're starting to see like the amount of cancer just in the tech industry, because you're sitting under these fluorescent lights all day with no windows. You're eating junk food. The promotion is like more caffeine, work harder. We're in crunch time. We're working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, like all this stuff. And it just, people are finally starting to see the light and leaving in quite a bit, or quite high numbers. The problem is, I think it's a little bit too much or too late for us to really do anything that's going to make any sort of difference.
Some of the I'm looking this way you're talking. People are seeing this too. We're watching the video part. I'm looking at some of the stories on this. I looked up mass exodus of people from the tech industry, and as I'm seeing some of these things, they're saying this. They're bringing it up, but then they're going along to explain it and saying, "Well, it's the cost of living is too high," and
Yeah.
So they're coming up with I guess nicer reasons other than these, the scare or the horror of the industry itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you look at some of these guys that, what was his name? The engineer that got left from Google, James, I can't remember his name, but the guy that wrote the thing about how women, how it's sexist the way Google treats people, and they fire them. But that's what you started to see more and more. Okay, here's another good example. About 4.5 years ago, I quit my main job to start my own business, but things were really slow. So I took an 8-week contract with a government organization. I don't want to say too much. It wasn't like it was the CIA or anything, nothing like that. But I was in doing IT work for them. And I really noticed it then, this culture of liberal, not even liberal, leftist ideology, of this communist ideology being pushed down their throats and integrated into, like they call it, corporate culture now, where they have this, like, everybody has to get together on Friday night and do these teamwork exercises. Like, it was all mind control the entire time. And if you didn't fit in, which of course I didn't, because I'm slightly conservative, I'm pretty much a free thinker, and I don't really care what other people think. I didn't fit into the crowd, but they wanted me to, and they kept trying to squeeze me into this little box. And if you said anything wrong, they'd all give you these dirty looks, and it's understandable why tech people are getting out of that industry, because when you see it around you and you're not one of the sheep, it's almost impossible for you to continue to put up with.
Right. I mean, it's almost like they notice that you're not part of the group, and now it becomes part of the job description to get you to change to be this one ideology.
Yep, that's exactly it.
I mean, I got to be honest with you, with this whole thing going on in America here, when I get people who are really hard left, that I've known for a while, and all of a sudden they're really taking a hard left. I don't know why, because I've known them, and all of a sudden maybe it's because they're listening to MSM or whatever. But
that's exactly what it is.
It's hard for me to deal with them. I mean, of course I could be, here's a lot of things going on. I got a lot of stuff going on with my business. Just, I'm taking a hit there. I'm getting older. I just was in the hospital a couple times, blah, 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 blah. Add that all into the mix. It's like, I don't have the patience for the BS. I don't have the patience, it's like to have a discussion. They go, you have to unravel what they think they know back a ways and start over again. And they don't want that, and I don't want it. I don't care,
Yeah, well, it's not our job to do so, I don't think, right? I don't have the time or energy to roll back somebody else's thinking. It's my dad, and I love my dad. He's a great guy, and our entire lifetime growing up, he was a conservative. As soon as Trump was elected, he started to make these comments about, oh, Jesus, how could they elect a guy like Trump in the States? And I thought, that's really weird. I guess, you don't like Trump. You don't like Trump. That's your opinion, but usually you're pretty conservative. So why the change? And then I found out exactly what it is. Over the last 3 years, he's become a fan of CNN. And he watches CNN day in, day out and just laps it up. And my dad's not your atypical person that would just sit there and take it all in. But he seems to, like, every time something's said about Trump, he's right on the bandwagon to tear him down. And I'm like, Dad, most of that stuff that they said wasn't even true.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but that's what it is. You know, it all comes back to brainwashing and mind control. And they do a really good job of using the mainstream media, even through platforms like the new media, like YouTube and Facebook or whatever, to put out these narratives, and people believe them because they're too lazy to have an original thought. They need some. It's like climate change. Like, we could argue all day about, you know, the all these things about the scientific studies and what this scientist says versus what that scientist says. But at the end of the day, you're just repeating what other people told you anyway. Right? Yeah. Like, how unless you go out and you take the data yourself and you set the parameters and you all this work that none of us could ever do, how would you know if they're even telling you the truth? And it just all goes back to the same thing: is people want an easy way of being able to decipher the world, so they're more than happy to believe whatever the media tells them, because then the world makes sense to them.
You know, I've been doing, while we're talking here, I've been looking this stuff up, and the next topic I want to get into is the real threat of AI. And so I start running these phrases like the real threat of AI and so on. And it's very interesting to see the different results that come up with Bing and Google. And just from a cursory look, it seems that Bing, which I did a show several weeks ago where I ran Alex Jones on Bing and Alex Jones on Google. In fact, I ran them on Google and DuckDuckGo and Start Page and all of them. And I ran them across. And Bing came up with the most, I think, fair representation of Alex Jones, putting his page as number one, as you would think, if you're going to search a person, you know, their page, especially since it's really popular. Whereas the other ones kept them, even DuckDuckGo and the Start Page, they did have more in there that was more just generic information, like his webpage, for example. But Google didn't even have his webpage, you know, on there.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. Now I'm looking at this, and Bing seems to be happy with technology and AI, whereas looking it up in Google, they do have some of the links to places that have problems with it. And I just think, it's interesting, because now the bias at Bing is pro tech and pro AI. Well, it is Microsoft, but Google still is a tech company, and yet they're still putting us up there. But anyway, let's get into this, the real threat of AI.
Well, okay. No, see, this is another one of those things that I hear a lot of people talking about that don't really seem to understand what they're saying. When they're talking about AI, we're hearing a lot about AI, about having to worry about the machines taking over and eliminating us all and making us into the matrix, and, you know, a lot of fear tactics.
Right.
Those types of machines are still at least 100 years away. There's no way we could ever build one now. We don't have the clue, even the base conception. We're just starting to understand how it might be done. And that's a big might. So people are freaking out about, you know, that sort of concept, when the real issue is the AI that's here already is the problem. And like we were talking before the show about deep fakes, about the technology that you're able to put somebody else's face on on another person and make them say whatever you want them to say. And this is AI driven technology. It's same as I don't know if you were aware of notjordanpeterson.com that came out a few weeks ago.
Oh no, but
yeah, it's called notjordanpeterson.com. They've taken it down now because Jordan was upset about it, which he had every right to be. But it was an AI synthesized system that they made with technology that's open source and freely available, And they took a bunch of audio clips from Jordan Peterson, fed it into this machine, and then you could type in a box and get Jordan Peterson to say whatever you wanted him to say. And it sounded, I'm not going to say it was 100% realistic, but it's getting really close, like way better than I had ever heard. And this is all technology that's available to each and every one of us. So what's to say the government isn't already using AI technology to program the news?
Wow.
They can look up Facebook. They can use these AI routines to go through all these millions and millions and millions of people that post all their private information on Facebook. And they can use that to gauge, like, what does the public believe? What if we told the public this versus what if we told the public that? And they can run all these experiments and things in the background that you never know are going on. And then they can culturally shift as they want to do it. That's why I'm a bit concerned about people freaking out about this cancel culture idea. Yes, it's a very big problem, but is that being pushed out there for them to achieve another result? Because it seems to be social media driven, that like all this outrage culture is coming from social media. So to me, that sounds like they almost want us to be outraged. So what are they outraging us for? So they could do something else, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, back.
I'm
to
looking. Actually, I can see why you sent me this link now. They took the movie and put Joe Rogan's face over him. That looks pretty good.
Joe Rogan. Yeah, isn't that amazing?
I mean, it's
like that.
I mean, good meaning it looks pretty realistic.
It's not, like I said, it's not 100%, but some of the ones, like, these are done by guys on the internet that spend a couple hours doing it. When you have money and a team and, you know, a dozen people working for you, what can you produce then?
Holy cow.
Could you have Trump stand up and say, you know, drop the N-bomb on TV, and everybody would believe it, and you would never be able to prove that he didn't do it because it looks real.
Well, you know, I want to say that they're getting really wild in trying to get him, and I wonder if there'll come a point where they'll just do it. You know, I mean, look at 9/11. I always thought there's, you know, we look back on it, there's some kind of inside component to it, right? And it's outrageous. If they did controlled demolition, which it appears to do it, I mean, to me, the fact that it came off. I mean, look at what happened at the Oklahoma bombing. To me, it looks like it was the same kind of deal. They had the charges planted. In fact, they show police removing the charges afterwards. And it failed. So only the front part fell down. Luckily for them, the front part. Imagine if the back part would have fell down with the truck blowing up in the front. That would have been hysterical. Well, you know, people died, so it's not hysterical, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No.
So, I mean, the guts to do that, to make that decision, let's do this, right? It was, to me, I wouldn't believe it until I saw more information about it, just on that at all alone. The guts it took to do that, because if it would have failed, you know. So now they're coming up with this stuff, and they did this dirty dossier thing, which failed. Almost made it though. If Hillary would have won, nobody would have known anything.
Yep.
So I see that, and the first thing I think of is how can they use it for weapon? I mean, it could be used, if not on Trump, it could be used to have the people, you know, and the terrorists. You can make the Ayatollah say anything you want. I mean, you know, holy cow.
Well, okay, say for instance, now just because I've heard stories of similar things happen. They say there's a powerful man in town, in a city, and you sleep with his wife, and he wants to come after you for doing it. You could put your face on somebody else's body and stick you in a, you know, some sort of compromising position. Drop that on the news. You being a person without wealth, don't have the resources to fight it. You're automatically labeled, convicted, and thrown in jail. You never did a thing. Like, that's how scary this technology is. Like, people don't realize how quickly your life can be turned upside down and them just basically unplug you from the entire system. just by using some of these technologies.
Well, Running Man, I guess, was
Yep.
an example of it. Well, that's why I'm not really in the club of how trust in the plan, everything's going to work out, because it doesn't look like that to me. I mean, when you say stuff like this, and with the mainstream media being so rabid in their ability to put out anything that makes their opponents look bad, how would they handle something like this? It came out, they would be going nuts with it. I mean, they're already going nuts with stuff that's proven false like 10 minutes later.
Well, that's just it. They're going to run with it because they're going to be rabid dogs to get that, to go after Trump or whoever their target is of the day.
That's amazing. So yeah, I think I myself forgot a little bit here. What we talk about, what is the AI of today that is the problem? Is that the data collection?
Yeah, that's it. That's the stuff like deep fakes and be able to think, okay, Boston Dynamics, you see their videos all over YouTube and Facebook of them building these machines that they're beating with hockey sticks and kicking over. And, those machines are driven by AI. And what AI is allowing is it's allowing smaller and smaller and smaller groups of people to have control of larger and larger amounts of people and instances and machines and whatnot. So, whereas, okay, let's just say Hitler. If Hitler, back in the 40s and 30s, he had to convince people to follow him. He had to convince soldiers to go into war to die for him. He had to convince people to fly planes over England and get shot down and die for him. What if Hitler came along in 2100 and instead of getting control of a bunch of people, he just got control of a military division of these advanced robots? How do you stop them? Right? Like this is where the real issue of AI comes in. Is it's not so much worrying about the machine itself killing me. I'm worried about other humans getting control of these machines and killing me. Because once they have the control, we'll never get it back.
You'll have to break through the front door to get in there. And if you have a series of back doors for safety reasons, that only means that someone else can get through it.
Exactly.
But I do agree with the AI. See, people talk about them getting to have this ability to think for itself, and I don't care how dramatic they make the software, you still have to program it to think. There's not a inside it. It can't do it on its own. All really AI is extremely fast, vast programming.
Exactly.
It's going to go like in chess, for example. Computers are good enough now that they can beat, really good chess players, masters, grandmasters, because it can analyze every move ever made and record it, and analyze that, take that point on it. So I mean, you could see, but that's still even though chess moves are a lot of moves, that's still really small compared to trying to run a city, for example. But
exactly, yeah,
it's still going to be programmed, and it still should have a plug, so to speak, to do it. Not an AI driven robot coming at you, with a club or gun or whatever. That I don't mean you could simply unplug that. You're going to wrestle with it and pull a little battery pack off or something. But I mean, anyway, let me go to the next one here before we get too far behind. Is 5G. Now I've never done a show on 5G, the health and security. I've never done a show on 5G. I've heard a lot of scares about it. I know the principles of microwaves and so forth. I understand how I had shows years ago with the guy. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I got his picture, and I see his face now, so it means, of course, I can't come up with his name. Dr. Carlo. And he talked about, did the research that it wasn't the microwave that was the problem in as much as the data packets along the way, which the frequency of the data packets were triggering bio mechanisms in people, and it's different for different people. Some people are affected here, there, and so on. When I hear 5G is going to fry you and all this stuff, I kind of balk at that. But on the other hand, if there is a problem with this technology. So let me get into this 5G. What is the health hazards of it other than what we already have with cell phones and whatnot?
Well, see, that's the big problem with 5G, as far as I'm concerned, is everybody's talking about these health effects that aren't really scientifically proven. They're just kind of speculation in a lot of instances. My belief is they wouldn't put out a technology that's going to cause everybody to come down with cancer all at once, because it would be too public and in their face. So I'm not too worried about that. My big worry with 5G has nothing to do with the health effects. Even if it did give you cancer, that's not what people should be worried about. What people should be worried about is what it is. It's a control grid. It's not like people think of it as 5G, just a new generation of cell phones. They're going to get, faster internet. I'm going to be able to watch more movies on Netflix, whatever. But that's not just it. 5G has the technology built into it to be able to map, do a 3D map of all of its environment, so it's able to modulate their frequencies better. But what you're saying is that all these 5G towers are going to be around cities, and they're going to be able to 3D map everything right through your walls, into your basement, you name it. They'll be able to track it all. So suddenly they're deploying an entire surveillance grid under our feet, and we're not even stopping to think about it. That's my problem with 5G. I mean, there's other things like the amount of data going through it and stuff with when you combine that with the ability to map out 3D objects and send that data back and forth. They're going to be able to do all kinds of things, and we'll never get away from it. Like, we're never going to get away from any of it. If you go into any of the cities, you basically walk into a jail. It's a prison where you're tracked the entire time you're in it, whether you've got a cell phone in your pocket or you have nothing in your pocket and you're just a human walking through.
Now, let me ask you about that. I was going to ask if you've been tracking, going into your house and mapping your house. Wouldn't there have to be some type of RFIDs or something in there for it to see? Are you saying this is going to be like X-rays that could see through the house, but then how does it bounce back and are read?
To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure on how that all works. I do know that technology exists inside of the system. So it's how much fidelity it has is another question. Maybe it's not as much as they would want, but over time, like with 6G, that's what it will become. But it's these things like with 4G, you had to have a cell phone in your pocket. 5G, you don't need that cell phone for them to track you. They can track it on your heartbeat, on your body temperature, like all these biometric signatures that they're able to use with 5G to track people. And I think that's where the real issue for me is.
Yeah, but I don't know about this, right? I'm just thinking off the top of my head from the principal knowledge that I have on the topic is that there has to be some kind of transmitter, because, like, for example, at radar, if radar goes through the wall and bounces back, that's the point. You have a bounce back and a receptor. So when you're sending out microwaves, which are less energetic, I don't see how. I mean, I know they can go through walls because your cell phone works, so to speak. But I also know that if you go through enough walls, it won't work. So I'm trying to think that even though that the microwaves are a smaller wavelength and therefore can penetrate more, you still need to have some kind of a feedback device. Now, if someone said, well, because your 5G is going to be working with your router, your TV, or RFID chips, and it'll send the information around, or the smart meters, for example. That's one of the problems with the smart meters and the electrical grid, is that they could literally team up with an RFID chip on your peanut butter, and you can know what's in your refrigerator to find out, to spend a coupon for their brand. Or they can find out, track money, for example, stacks of money, having the little strips in them. There still has to be a reader, some kind of a sender, which is...
Well, what I'm thinking, or my guess would be, is that they probably, like you mentioned with 5G, their penetration is much higher, but their distance that they can cover is quite a bit lower.
Right.
So they need to have way more of these towers spread around for everybody to get good signal. My guess would be is that they use triangulation methods with those towers to be able to tell density of walls and map it all out.
Because I still like if somebody has some kind of device, okay, all bets are off. But I'm still I have to look into it. I just haven't got around to doing a show on it because there's so much stuff out there about it, and I don't know. I just was kind of like
I would say just ignore the health implications for now, just because a lot of that seems to be a lot of speculation, and just look at the actual technical aspects of what 5G can do. And then you can extrapolate from there where they can use it.
Because I had Dr. Richard Allen Miller on here, and he went briefly onto it, and he brought up a point about the wavelength as being in the giga range, where the wavelengths are so small, and based on the ability to receive radio waves, you have antennas that are built to a certain length because it has to be some kind of mathematical multiple of the wavelength. Now, radio waves are very long and different, but when you get to microwaves and so forth, this is why cell phones were bad for kids, because their skull is about is a mathematical representation of the wavelength, and since our bodies are full of metal, based iron and zinc and whatnot, that they found that humans, especially younger kids, are best set up to actually get those radio waves, and it doesn't do anything in and of itself. You can't hear the person. I can hear. I don't need a phone. I can just listen. But what it does is it does trigger, depending on individual, biological functions. One example was when you eat food, your body sends out a trigger for the cells to absorb nutrients. And there's another trigger for your cell to excrete wastes. Well, they did some tests, and this is what Carlo was talking about, where they found that some people because of the cell phone stuff, they got the triggers to release waste when they're supposed to absorb food or whatever, that kind of stuff. And I can understand at least that the concept of it. I can understand that happening, but I know they got the police guys can come by and look in your house with the radar. I understand that, but still having it be ubiquitous like that without having some type of feedback. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to definitely keep that on hold and look at it.
I'll keep my eyes out for more information. I'll pass it over to you if I've seen it. A lot of my problem is I just take in too much information, and sometimes I can't remember where I got it.
Well, and what I find, and it's very frustrating, and I've been kind of ragging on it, if I can use an old phrase on the radio, an old sexist phrase, I guess, that I can't. Just people just say stuff. They just say stuff. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Well, how does that happen? Well, I don't know. I read this, and they read it and believe it, and it's done.
Yep.
And it's driving me crazy. You can't just say stuff. If you're going to tell me that trust in the plan and Q is going to solve everything, you got to tell me why. How is that? What's the mechanism for it to be? Well, you just have to have faith. Faith isn't a mechanism. I mean, it may be a mechanism in a spiritual, divine sense. But if you bring God into it, God's going to save America. Why? That's a pretty lousy place, if you ask me. I mean, there's a lot of nice people in it, but I'm talking about the structure of it, the infrastructure of it. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So I mean, unless he's going to get rid of the infrastructure for the people, okay, fine. But and then if you ask them, what about like Bangladesh? They're pretty messed up over there. Well, it's because they're not Christian. I can't deal with that. I just
Yeah.
can't deal with that simple logic that's, well, this, that. Oh, okay, everything's fine. No, it doesn't make sense. So I get just overwhelmed with this stuff. It's just a news thing comes out and it's all over the world. And then it's worse than like CNN is even doing. I mean, this kind of thinking has got into the mainstream. So now they come up with this story, blah, and then 10 minutes later they're retracting it or ignoring it. It's just, anyway, if you want to say something about that, or I'll go to the last one on here.
Oh, we can go next.
Echelon, college story. Now, Echelon, is this Project Echelon?
Yeah.
Or, okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Now, I'm not 100%. I put that on the list because I'm not 100% sure I've ever told that story on your show.
Okay.
But back in 1994, I was going to computer college in my first year, and our teacher, it turns out we had some really strange teachers that seemed to have a lot of experience in like really high end computing, like stuff that most people didn't even know existed back then. So we were doing a programming class, and in the middle of it, we got talking about government spying on the internet or something along those topics. And he blurted out, he's like, well, the government already has all that data. And we kind of looked at him like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, just a few years ago, I worked on this project with the Canadian Intelligence Services and the other Five Eyes group of countries. So like the UK, the US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And he said, we're already tracking every phone call, fax, or email, or any data transmission across the internet already. And this was in 1994. Now, he called it Echelon. He said the name of the project was called Echelon. And, you know, it was such a passing remark. It was interesting, but it wasn't like, at the time I was 18, 19. I wasn't that interested in it. And time goes by and I never thought of it again until I believe it was 99 or 2000 when the EU finally came out with there was a big stink made about this program called Echelon, where they were listening in on people's conversations. And they swept it under the rug and made it sound like it wasn't as big as what it was. But I was told all the way back then that they could track everything. And the assumption that I got from the way he was stating it is they wouldn't have given us any of that, fax machines, telephone communications, internet communications, if they couldn't already track it before they even let us have it. So that's, you know, kind of where I get my viewpoint on all of being on the internet and privacy is there is no privacy, and there never has been privacy on the internet.
One of the things when the Soviet Union fell down, there wasn't an internet or nothing, but they were using fax machines. So it's probably that, and now maybe because Russia didn't have the technology, but they couldn't trace them and all that. But the thing about the whole capturing the data, and this is where I guess AI is as they get bigger and bigger, they can do this. But from what I understand, the NSA and all that, they're building these giant server to keep this data. But what I understand is they're able to record it, but it's difficult to search through it because the information is just phenomenal, how much it is.
So that's what they tell us.
Right. So what I kind of think they do, and they can have search words and they can go like, let's keep track over here and kind of watch this for these keywords. But probably what happens is it's more of a forensic tool. Now, it could be made to actually make falsities. Now you throw in this other thing you showed me today. So I'm guessing that what will happen is, hey, we had this event happen. Let's go back now and go back into our collection and follow these trails of these individuals and re-listen to everything.
Well, it gets a little deeper than that when you're talking about AI and machine learning. With that sort of technology that already exists, you could go through every conversation recorded in the last 20 years with the system, have it automatically pick out keywords, collate data, put it together, and it could tell you Say you wanted to know who in the United States had interest in militias and has ever joined a militia or spoken about a militia in a phone conversation or wanting to, harm the government in some sort. They could have an entire list spit out just by using AI and being able to tell you exactly when you said it, where you said it, who you were setting with, everything.
That's kind of what I'm saying. I guess the difference might be how long it would take and how wide is the scope. Because I know these, I was reading about some of these quantum computers, because when I started, you were talking about going to college for computers. I went to college, I wish I would have stayed with it. I was learning electronic engineering in the late 70s with punch cards, mind you.
Yeah.
But the thing I'm looking at is the ability to actually look through the data based on the processing power, and with these quantum computers back then, well, I shouldn't say back then, it's probably in the 80s, the quantum computers where they were going to use quanta, the quantum state of matter, to store data. And so you have one atom is made up of all these quanta, and they would be able to change the state of the quanta as memory and then read it. Which is, They had no concept of how to do that. This is what they wanted to do. When I'm looking at quantum computers now, it doesn't look to be like that at all. It seems to me that what they have done with the superconducting, super cold, super fast stuff has been able to use, instead of the bit on and off, they have the on and off, and then the both. Like even though it doesn't make sense to us in a binary world, both. And by using that, they have a lot more memory and processing power of it, but it's still not quanta. They're not storing inside matter, the state of matter, and having it, read it. So it's kind of to me like the name is not really earned.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a misnomer there, but I mean, as far as them storing data quantumly, they are doing that. They've been able to do it since like the 90s was the first time I've ever seen it done. I mean, it was just a small experiment to prove that it was viable. But yeah, I'm sure that NSA facility in the middle of the desert, I'm sure that's what they're running in there is quantum computing. As it only makes sense why they would need that much, like, to be in a space where they could vent that much hot air and have access to more room to, because as you know, quantum computing, you got to run it at basically absolute zero in order for it to work properly.
Fractions of it, yeah. Above it.
So the only, one of the best places to do that would be in the middle of the desert, where you could bury it underground and have lots of room to exhaust all that heat where nobody would notice.
Yeah, I'm guessing, I was doing in my head now, then, if you got it cold enough and, if you got it close to absolute zero, then the quantum state would be stable to be able to read and write, if you will, to it, because being at absolute zero, it's not doing anything anyway, because everything kind of just freezes in a sense at that point. So the colder you can get it, the more stable it would be, or the least unstable, I guess would be the way to say it. So I guess it's possible to that point, but I haven't seen it really described up other than you. I haven't really described that way. Maybe they're not talking about it because it's proprietary, or I don't know.
Well, it's so far advanced. See, another interesting thing I was told in college, I'll leave it with this one, is our networking professor. Now, his father was military intelligence, so he had quite a pedigree, and he told us back, like I said, 1994, 95, where processors would go over the next 20 years. And he showed us, he wrote it right out on the whiteboard of where the generations would switch and where the technologies would be swapped out for new technologies, etc. And I asked him, I was like, well, if they can already do all this stuff, why don't they just sell us this fancy stuff versus this older stuff that they've been able to do? And he's like, it all comes back to money. And selling consumers, old technology makes sense, because why would they bring out any new technology until they've already sold the crap out of the old technology? And that's what they've done all over these years. And what we have in our home computers could be hundreds of times faster, but they don't do it because then they would lose money on their R&D budgets. Because a lot of, like, the more they develop, the cheaper it gets, right? So anyway,
plus they'd have to now the computers are so fast. Again, I started out with a Timex Sinclair for my own computer, right? So computers are so fast now that they have to come up with a reason why you need a faster computer. Because I mean, the computer that I'm using right now, right now I'm producing HD videos, and I got a recording studio in it. It's like I could use this computer for the rest of my life and not need any more, because I'm doing everything I want to do now. Do I want to make 8K videos? No, So, but there's got to be a reason for it. In a gaming community, they got an ongoing thing. They just make the games more complicated, and you got to buy bigger video cards. And
but even then, it's slowing down. Like the computer I'm using right at the moment, it's 6 years old. I bought it when I first quit my job and started my company, and I don't have to upgrade it. Like, I still haven't upgraded. The only thing I did upgrade is I finally upgraded the video card in it, just because I wanted to play some of the latest games. But beyond that, like, I haven't had to touch it in 6 years, and I do 4K video. I do 3D animation on it. I do, like,
there you go.
Like, there's no real need for people to buy a new computer every 3 or 4 years anymore.
Right, and yet they still have to somehow get you to buy it. And so I've heard, and he got caught. One of them got caught. I think it was Mac, got caught on their older machines, turning off some switches to make them go slow, so that you would go to the new ones, and that kind of thing. So it's just
they do the same thing with cell phones. Like, you can tell when your cell phone, warranty is up, because your cell phone will start slowing down and acting funny. And it always happens within a week or two of your warranty ending.
Well, when I got this phone, I don't know exactly what it is. It's an Android. It's a Samsung, but I think it's like they had it in Walmart. I think it was like a Galaxy 5, and the 6 came out, so they still had these 5s laying around. So then they put it in a nice little package and called it the Galaxy Prime or something, just so they can sell it, right? Well, I got it for $100. I still got it. I don't know how many years I had it now. But when I first got it, there's so much memory in here. What am I going to put in this phone? Well, now I'm deleting stuff because I can't fit it in there.
Yeah. Well, there's always that constant march to more resources and stuff. It just, as time goes on, our need for faster and faster and bigger computers is getting less and less. There will come a time where you won't have to worry about it at all, but by then you'll probably just jack directly into the internet anyway with a little or what is it, a 1/8 jack into the back of your head.
No, I'm sorry, it's never going to happen. First off, it won't happen in my life, I don't think, anyway, because they talk about downloading people into computers and living forever, and I think it's about the biggest folly that I think I've ever heard in my life, because, like, let's say at best they can make an AI copy of you based on a long study, so that people talking to this computer would think it's you. Let's just say they can do that. That's still not you. You're dead.
No.
No, you're gone. You're dead.
It's a fancy replica.
But the people around here might be able to use the word enjoy this copy that was made, but the idea of me sitting in my head thinking I'm going to be in a computer, and this same me is going to be looking out at the computer going, yeah, I made it. It's not going to happen. It's just not ever going to happen. And I think the people that believe this, I mean, I don't have to worry about it because I can never afford the $1 trillion to do that. But, I just see these people are all excited to go through this process. And, oh, by the way, it will kill your body in the process. But don't worry about it. We're going to come on the other side. And people go through this all excited, and all of a sudden they wake up dead. I mean, I happen to believe in afterlife and all that. So they're waking up on the other side going, huh? What happened? And I could see the entities, whether it be angels or demons, just sitting there laughing and having you thought you were going to go in a computer? Yeah, man, humans are dumber than I thought,
Well, and that's always the great trick of technology and moving forward into, basically the apocalypse, is that humans, the only experience is here, and we're all atheists, and there is no afterlife, and this is all there is, and you have to enjoy it, and blah blah blah. And
why?
it's such
When I talk to someone who's an atheist and they say, well, we're all going to die and that's it, and I'd say, why don't you just kill yourself now? Well, I want to enjoy life. Why? Because at some when you're, I'm 62 now, right? So I realized when I was 20, it's forever, 62 is forever away. That's forever. Well, here I am, right? Well, the same me is here, and I'm going like, well, wait a minute. The stuff I did when I was 20, it might be nice to think about, but it means nothing now. Yeah. Fun. I went camping on this day and all that. It's like, okay, I have a memory of it. That's nice, but here I am now. So here you are at 95 going, well, I'm an atheist. I had a fun time. Now I'm going to just shut off and go away. Well, just cut to the quick and do it now. Get it over with. Because to me, I look at, of course, if I had a lot of money, it'd be different. But I look at life and I go, life is full of pain. Look around. Look at how many people on this earth. Are they going to eat tomorrow? I don't know. Maybe. And so I look at it and I go, like, it's not. If there wasn't a bigger picture here, I'd be gone because it wouldn't matter. Well, don't you care about your kids? I'd recommend they join me. I'm not being dramatic here. I'm just saying, like.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think that's the real key is, and like I'm not a big religious person, but I have a lot of faith in some of these end of the world Christian prophecies. We'll just call them that, of where they'll have us all convinced that there's nothing else left and we'll just revert to these animalistic states. And that's what we're seeing happening is they're convincing us there's no afterlife, that there's no reason to do any of this, that we're just here as some sort of cosmic fluke, and I don't believe any of that. I personally think the reason that we are here is to learn and to grow as beings. And when we hit the other side, that's when we're just getting started.
Yeah, well, the idea of that the cosmos evolved itself to reach to the point so that we're actually observing itself, right? Carl Sagan was into this. I used to love watching Cosmos back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. I still have the beta tapes every time recorded it from TV on. But I look at it now, the theology behind it, it's like so ridiculous. But there's no, it's like, if you believe that, then there is some type of a God in the cosmos evolving itself to be able to see itself. Mm-hmm. And it used you as a pair of eyes and then threw you out in the garbage and picked up someone else to use. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
my thing is look, they say things like, there is no afterlife. And my simple question is, well, what is a dream then? Because I truly believe that when we're unconscious and we're dreaming, we are somewhere else in some other reality, whether, it's manifested by our own minds or if it's a realm God himself created. I don't know. But that's basically every person I've ever talked to that's had an after death experience. That's what they described to me. Yeah. It's basically like a dream.
My sister actually had that experience. It was pretty funny because the evidence in it was she saw herself on the table when she's in surgery and died, and they were saying things to each other. Oh, hurry up! We gotta, oh no, I'm screwed here. Well, we got to get this. We got to get her back. And they're talking to stuff, right? So when she came back, she was retelling what happened. The doctor turned white. Mm-hmm. The fact that she knew this stuff, could say this stuff, but for her. The experience is very powerful, but someone outside her doesn't have that power. When you have a spiritual experience, it could be life-changing for you, but it doesn't mean people have to, they'll be able to understand it or accept it or buy it or whatever. That's why I don't talk a whole lot about my own personal spirituality because it doesn't matter. I mean,
Exactly.
I mean, it might matter to someone else who's spiritual, and maybe we could talk about our experiences. But if you're going to sit and prove it by stating these things, you know, it's not going to happen.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't have to prove your faith, right? Like your faith is literally your faith. And the other thing is too is we're all experiencing this world through our own view. And what I'm experiencing might not necessarily be what you're experiencing, right? Like it's kind of one of those quantum advanced thought things, but like things like the Mandela effect. Okay. Now, obviously the Mandela effect is a funny conspiracy theory, and everybody, you know, I'm not necessarily opposed to the Mandela effect being true. Maybe you exist in a different dimension than I do. Maybe tomorrow when I wake up, I'll be in a different dimension than the one I'm in today. I just won't know. You know, like the world is a big and wonderful and magical place. And we should all, there's a lot of pain in the world. There's a lot of disturbing things. But if we stop and we realize that we were put here for a purpose, every last one of us is here to do something on this planet before we leave it. Just do your purpose. Stop worrying about it. And tomorrow will come. You know, like when the afterlife comes, you'll find out what it is when you get there. But we got to really focus on what we're all here to do.
I've just got, this was told that on the Spreaker, there's no sound. So apparently it worked for quite a while and now nothing. But we're about done here anyway.
Well, that's cool. We can always put it on YouTube.
Yeah, I will upload. Well, it's right now. It's live on YouTube, and it'll automatically be posted. And then what I'll do is I have a copy locally. Well, you know, I got learned about the software from you, and I will strip off the audio and upload it to
Perfect.
there. So, but well, I tell you, it's always good to talk to you. I like talking. I mentioned this in the little blurb I wrote. I like talking to you because we could talk about any of this topic, and it's not like I'm making you think my way, you're making me think your way. I'm interested, you know, we're interested in each other's points of view. Okay, I'll have to check that out or whatever. And, you know, it's not this argument. I just grow so weary of this stuff. I'm not looking to argue about nothing. But,
no, I just like to discuss.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's okay. That's why I like doing it. And, because I could learn and move on and focus. Like I'm going to go back and I'll look at this deep fake stuff, which I saw the news that came out about it, but I've never seen it actually work. It's like, oh my God, nothing is real anymore. Nothing is real anymore.
You dig into the deep fakes and they're getting better every week. I think that's what I really want to push on the deep fakes before we sign off. Every week it's getting closer and closer and closer. And I mean, they're taking jumps. When I seen deep fakes a year ago, it was easy to tell that they were a fake. That Joe Rogan one I sent you, you can tell, but it's a lot harder. And now I'm starting to see some that, you wouldn't even know. There was one where they put Steve Buscemi on some woman's face, and it looks like Steve Buscemi's sister. Like it's absolutely amazing. So you definitely want to check out more deep fakes on YouTube. And looking at in terms of the government, you have this dossier, for example, and if it would have been if Trump didn't win, this dossier wouldn't have been brought out as a flaw, and it would have been pushed through. And this is like nothing compared to this deep fake stuff. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, I can't see the left, as they lose the 2020 election, I can't see them just going, oh, well, we'll try again in 4 years. They didn't do it now. So they're going to have, their goal is to get him out of office, and they want to put him in jail, and they want him to suffer. I mean, that's how much they hate him. And I've heard one of the deep safe people that talked about it, and they said that, you're going to be in jail and you're going to suffer, or whatever was saying. I mean, it's like, first off, it's like, how do you say that to the president and not be arrested? Yeah. But
So I don't know. I've been studying Bible prophecy just, I don't want to say for fun. I don't know how to say it, like recreationally and not professionally. And, and I've always wondered how some of the stuff would pull off that has been projected. And I have a better handle of it now. It's like for the first time, I mean, I know many times throughout history, people thought that it was the end times. I mean, the Mormon religion, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they all came out in the early 1900s, and they all were prophesying, the original people, that Jesus was coming. And he didn't come. And then they settled down and made a real religion out of it, and it just came up with some kind of he came spiritually or something like that. And you had our favorite guy, Camping, who started out in 85, and in 2012 redid it again, and it didn't come. And so, and I understand back, if you look at the Bible text, back in the day, they were waiting for Jesus. He died. Okay, is he coming back? So we've been doing this for 2,000 years. But it seems that now, because of a lot of both technical things as well as just people going crazy, I can see how are Christians going to be persecuted? Well, I can see how they're going to be persecuted. The way, and it's not that some of them maybe not deserve it, but that's another. So I mean, I can actually see it happening now.
It was like when people used to say the mark of the beast would be some sort of microchip under your skin, and I remember thinking like, whatever, how is that all going to work? Blah 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 blah. Fast forward, and now I see these tattoos that are electronical tattoos that have a little circuit tattooed into them.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, there it is. That's it. That's how it's going to start. And it's going to be something like that.
And it really, I looked at that as a descriptor. And the key phrase in that stuck with me is, you can't buy, or it's on your hand and your forehead, or either or. And you can't buy or sell without it. Well, I thought about it. I think that was like, if you're doing things with your hand, you're going to have to cheat. You're going to have to do evil in order to make a living. And if it's on your head, you're a planner. You're like management, let's say, and workers.
Yep.
So to come to a point in business where you have to cheat in order to stay in business, well, we've already been here for a while. It's just getting worse. So instead of being so literal about it, you cannot have a tattoo, you cannot have a microchip, and you could still be part of the beast because of the idea of cheating and stealing from other people to stay in business. But anyway.
That's very interesting way of looking at it. That's something I'll have to think about.
That's kind of how I look at it, rather than being, because I came from a fundamental background, and that was the downfall of me being a fundamentalist in the class, because it was too black and white, and it was too arbitrary at some points. And arbitrary is the stuff that I can't handle. I can't have arbitrary. Do this. Well, because you can talk my mind. Probably one of the first things I said when I was a child wasn't mama or daddy. It was why. I want to know why. Anyway, we'll probably start talking another 2 hours if we don't.
Good point.
Well, it's good. Again, good. Keep in touch. We'll have to do this time and again. And
yeah, for sure. And anytime you want me on, let me know. I'm more than happy to. Like I said, I always enjoy our conversations because they're actual debates, and they're back and forth, and we're not just keeping quiet because we don't want to offend the other one. And that means a lot to me. So anytime you need me, just let me know.
Yeah, right. And it's not there's no offense taken or meant. And I don't know. It's nice. I wish it was like this, but it's not. And actually, it's encouraging because I get so frustrated with this that I go like, why am I doing this? I could just go stare at a wall, and
yeah, exactly.
All righty. Well, we'll let you go, and thanks a lot, and we will talk again.
Okay. Thanks a lot, James. Have a good night.
All righty.
Bye.
So we're talking to Rob Daven, again, the conspiracy theory, conspiracychannel.net is a project, Jackton, FreeJackTV.tv was another project that he had. All of this stuff we heard in the very beginning kind of unraveled because of the system overcharged and wanted to drive them out, like all independent type people. If you don't sign on the line, you don't go along with it, you're in trouble. So, and I will, apparently people on Spreaker at some point stopped hearing me. I don't know why, but I will strip the audio from the video and I will upload it there. So, alrighty. Thanks for the people hanging out in the chat room, and to those people who are watching this in the future. If you look on the bottom, there's all kinds of ways that you can find out about the show or even help the show if you see so inclined. Patreon and all that other stuff. You just click on the links. And I think we'll go, and we'll see you next time. God willing, and the creek don't rise. But reach for the skies within. That is the important part.
Thank you.